All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So it's great to have you here with us today for this really interesting webinar on how to influence decision makers. I think this is a key webinar in the lead up to the UN conference that is coming. Hopefully this will give you essential tools and tips on how to best use this opportunity to influence change. So my name is Alyssa Vaillancourt. I'm representing the International Secretary for Water, and it's an immense pleasure for us to be co-hosting this webinar with Sanitation and Water for All. So to introduce Sanitation Water for All and as well introduce our two amazing speakers for today, I will hand it over to Manishka.
Hi, everyone. Let me put my camera on. So hi, everyone. I'm Manishka Kistama. I'm the Digital Communication Manager for Sanitation and Water for All. So welcome to this session. We are very happy to have you all joining the session. Just to give you like a bit of introduction about this, the idea behind the session is because we are like nearly 3 weeks before the UN 2023 Water Conference, and we need decision makers to prioritize water and sanitation, and the young people plays a crucial role in that. So today we have Kevin Russell, who is the regional coordinator for Africa at Sanitation and Water for All, and he will give you an overview of the tools and the strategy that can be put in place at national and global level for you to reach out to high-level decision makers. And we have Kenneth, who is our SWA Youth Champion, and who is also part of the Global Youth Movement. And he will share with you the different initiative projects, events. So basically the practical side of how the young people in Latin America, what are they doing to reach high-level decision makers in their region. And then Elisa will end the session by presenting like a very exciting campaign. I think most of you are already aware that we are going to launch a campaign on the 9th, so tomorrow. So she will present to you the campaign and ask you to also join forces for us to make noise. So I will not speak more. I will let Kevin to kickstart the session. So really looking forward to our both of our speakers today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manishka, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're connecting from the world right now. Can you all see my screen? I'm sure you can. It looks like it's in order on my side. So it's a real pleasure to be speaking to you today around what youth and high-level engagement. And I thought we would do this in a couple of ways. Firstly, by just giving you a quick overview of who Sanitation and Water for All is as a partnership, some of the problem statements of what we're facing, and then just to give some of definitional clarity to advocacy and lobbying. And then towards the end of the presentation, I'll give some very practical examples of how, of what one can do when engaging with high-level officials in government. As regional coordinator for Africa, my role is to work with government focal points in 25 countries, and I'm in a way an advisor to government focal points. So I give you this information really much from the inside track, and I hope that you'll be able to use it as best as possible. So the Sanitation and Water for All, our mission is, we're a global partnership, and we have our mission to eliminate inequalities in realizing the human rights to water and sanitation. We do this by doing 3 things really: raising political will, ensuring good governance, and then helping to optimize financing. So the partnership focuses on the hardest to reach and most vulnerable individuals, communities, countries, and regions, and puts in particular women and girls at the center. Of course, today being International Women's Day, this couldn't be more germane an issue. And not just as passive recipients, but as dynamic agents of change. So members of the partnership are change makers, just like the youth and young people involved in this call today. SWA works by harnessing the collective power of its partners to support government-led but multi-stakeholder action at national, regional, and global levels. But just in a nutshell, again, it's these 3 pillars that we're talking about: building and sustaining political will to eliminate inequalities, championing multi-stakeholder approaches, And then, of course, working towards system strengthening and attracting investments in the WASH sector. The partnership is also fortunate to have a global leadership council made up of former heads of state like Laura Chinchilla, the former president of Costa Rica, Kevin Rudd, former prime minister of Australia, as well as civil society leaders. And these particular individuals in the Global Leadership Council play a very important ambassadorial role with regards to governments as ways in which we can advise at the presidential level and beyond. Our work essentially comes up with, we hold high-level convenings. These can happen in two forms: sector ministers' meetings or finance ministers' meetings. And we engage also with the heads of state and government, engaging with parliamentarians. Of course, we have a youth strategy and the Global Leadership Council, who I mentioned earlier. The partnership also works on the basis of creating mutual accountability. And this is quite an important concept. In fact, we are 5 years into the creation of this mechanism. And what it is it's a way in which multi-stakeholders can make commitments towards WASH and then work together in terms of achieving these with government. And it works in a cycle where essentially governments make a national commitment to start off with. Partners from all constituencies then make commitments to contribute to the national commitments. Initially, this was always the flow, although recently we're also finding partners from other constituencies making commitments even before government. Government and partners then collaboratively implement the commitments, and all actors mutually monitor progress and take corrective action. This then leads to everyone reporting to update the partnership, and ultimately the cycle then starts again. So what this essentially does is, while we build the political will at the political level with ministers, heads of state, at a very much a technical level, we also ensure that partnerships are in place to ensure that these political agreements can actually be met. I think there's nothing more frustrating than having another political statement with a great promise that is undelivered. I think we're very common. This is a common feature of the global world of politics. And so in the WASH sector, to avoid that, we ensured that the political level and the technical level were connected through a mutual accountability mechanism. So let's get on to what the problem statements are. There are two in particular when it comes to young people. So despite being a significant political constituency in Africa, the region that I'm responsible for, we're actually facing a demographic shift at the moment. And there are actually more young people than there are any other age group. But despite that, young people are not consulted in 2 out of 3 countries during the process of preparing poverty reduction strategies or national development plans. In fact, young people are absent in many of these conversations. But furthermore, just broadly, civil and political rights are in decline. So these have been limiting the freedom that people have had to engage with those in authority to bring about positive change. I mean, of course, in the period of COVID, there were particular civil liberties that were, put on the side burner for a short while. I mean, our freedom to move, of movement, or those sort of things. But since then, I think it's also fair to say that the civil society sector in particular, through a crisis of finance, through a crisis sometimes of identity, but more importantly, through a political and a freedom crisis, are finding a decline and limiting people's movements. So we're looking at how to engage at the high level, bearing these two things, bearing that, for starters, youth are not at the center of these discussions, and secondly, that even if you weren't youth, the center is very thin at this point in time. So, fist of fives, hoping that your cameras could be on. The idea here is how comfortable are you in advocacy, and you can show us a fist for naught, 5 fingers if you're an expert, and I just want to get a quick feel around the room how comfortable we are with advocacy. So yeah, if you can just put your hands up very quickly. Let me just have a show of hands. How comfortable we are with advocacy. I can't see everyone's screen, so somebody else will have to. Good. Kenneth is a 3. That's fantastic. Manishka, Lisa, I can see your screen. So we got a 3 and a 3. Okay. Well, the intention is to get us all to a 5 at the end of today, or at least in the coming months. So Let's also start off with another really important concept. So when it comes to meaningful participation, I think apart from people being excluded completely, there's also a form of inclusion that is equally damaging, and that's a tokenistic form of inclusion. So that is when one pretends to include disadvantaged groups in order to give an appearance of fairness. We find this in particular when it comes to giving women a platform, giving indigenous people, and of course youth. And this is most often seen in an invitation to a meeting, but then you have somebody like a program director or others actually going through your speech, making sure you're saying the right things. And what we're trying to do is talk about meaningful advocacy. We're talking about actions that are direct, that are purposeful, that are inclusive at all stages, and they enforce an equality of voices for those, of all of those involved. We would encourage you at this point, if you'd like to tweet, but maybe this is not the right question to tweet. We'll do that a bit later. But I'll ask you this question. How have you experienced tokenistic participation? Have you experienced it? And if you have, you can share that, give an example in the chat box here of a time when you've actually been invited to a meeting, but it's actually been tokenistic. I'm sure there are no shortages of examples, unfortunately. So when it comes to advocacy and lobbying, and there are many different organizations that look at this very differently. So when we talk about lobbying, we often are talking about government-facing work, whereas advocacy can be both government-facing but also public-facing work. When it comes to the high-level engagement, what we're interested in here is lobbying, which is influencing decision makers to take an action, or in a way influencing legislation and policy, which then obviously gets decision makers to work in a particular way. There's also high-level media, which is linked to this kind of lobbying, and this is targeted media at decision makers to get them to take an action. Often you'll find that ministers and other political folk will actually have a clipping service, and whenever their name appears in a newspaper, they get a briefing in the morning saying, you know, Minister, you've appeared in this newspaper, and this is what it was. So they tend to pay attention to that if they're named and have been called specifically to an action. On the other hand, there are sort of public-facing things like research, where you can conduct research to encourage thought leadership on a topic, or what we call popular mobilization, which is campaigning through stunts or actions that bring about popular support for the cause, you know, getting a famous celebrity to host a conference, building awareness on a particular issue. And of course, there's also media work that we do that isn't necessarily targeted at politicians. This is, you know, opinion pieces or getting involved in a debate, stating your case. Now, it's quite important to understand these different forms of advocacy and lobbying, because I think for many of us, we're really good at the green, the dark blue, and the pink on this, the research, popular mobilization. We're very good at the constituencies, very good at building the evidence, very good at getting that evidence out in the media, but not necessarily always in a targeted way at decision makers. And there are many reasons for that. The one is a sense of, look, the decision makers won't listen to us anyway. They've got too many people that they're listening to, or you know, the decision makers, the process of high-level engagement takes a lot of time, and I can get something like a short, quick win immediately. But I'm going to encourage you to actually think more longer term when it comes to lobbying, because the power of lobbying is obviously that you can make a change at a more systemic level that is obviously durable and passes the test of time. This is something I'd like you to all tweet if you can, and it's a question of, when I think about a topic or an issue or policy, I feel something because of something. And I'd like you to maybe tweet this, or alternatively put it in the chat box here. And the reason for this is that I think this ultimately defines what happens in advocacy. It is about thinking, it is about feeling, and it is about the evidence, right? So when you think about the topic, what is felt, and what is the evidence that leads you to that point. So when it comes to high-level engagement, what do we see? This is a basic planning cycle that is used by Oxfam, and it's essential that you look at planning, establishing contacts and relationships, diagnosing the situation. Once you've done that, you overcome the concerns and the resistance, You work cooperatively, create positive partnerships, and then continue your close. And this is what they call the process of influencing. It's essential that in any advocacy, you actually understand where where your targets are actually standing. And I'm going to share with you as we go further. I think what starts off as an advocacy target sometimes actually becomes a lifelong friend. And it's quite important to understand that. There's also, very importantly, when dealing with high-level engagement, there's an issue of power, right? So what is my relative power to others? And in fact, a lot of people feel a degree of powerlessness. Now, we can think about it in three ways. People either have power over others, so they're having power to take away power from others, or using it as a way of dominating or preventing others from gaining it. And we do this. I think sometimes even as organizations, we want to make sure that our organization gets the best foot forward. It's important to have that power, and sometimes it comes with the negative of having power over others or denying power to others. There's of course power with others, finding common ground among different interests based on mutual support, solidarity, and collective strength. And in almost every advocacy training that we start off with, we need a network. And the reason for that is that power with others is always the strongest form of power. But ultimately, there's a power that all of us have, and that's power to make a difference. And that is because every individual has an opportunity to shape his or her life and the life of others. If based on mutual support, this can also lead to power with others. And every person has this power. So even if you get to a point where a conversation with a decision maker seems to not be listened to, it's always important to remember that you do have that power to make a difference. And it's something nobody can actually take away from you. But it's also useful to think of power in the following ways. There are essentially 5 distinct power bases. The one is coercive, where you can, mediate punishments. So if somebody doesn't follow what you like, you then use your power to essentially get them back in line. There's a legitimate form of power where people have authority. They've built authority, credibility, and they can obviously prescribe behavior from that. This is a very common form of power. The person mediates rewards. So if you behave, we will reward you in the following way. And this is often the form of power that makes people feel worse. There's also a referential power, and that is identification and affection to the person. Almost everybody who works in advocacy ultimately wants to have this power, referential power, rather than any of the other powers. There's also expert power, right? So the person possesses a unique or rare knowledge and skill. And that's useful from time to time. If you need to have an academic who's a particularly skilled person at something, it's a very helpful form of power, but it's extremely limited. So ultimately what you want to do is build a referential form of power where you identify and create affection to the person who is your advocacy target. And of course, individual power, as I mentioned earlier, we all have this. So we have power through knowledge, expertise, information, tradition, community, values. We have it through personality, our charisma, reputation, credibility, empathy, but you also have power from your family, your community, and your workspace. And these are things that as you build referential power, you need to build from these particular points. So here's some top tips for lobbying. The first is to get to know the target, right? So you confirm your timings and an agenda in advance. You definitely need to find out where people are at. Don't be late. Be clear on key messages, your key asks, and what you want the key decision maker to do. Generally speaking, if you ask for a meeting with a high-level official, you will get the meeting. It's a question of timing, whether you get it almost immediately or it could take a couple of months. But they often have a democratic duties and mandates to actually engage stakeholders. It's very important that you state who else will attend and talk to them informally in advance. We often find it, when you have a meeting with a minister, every single person wants to go along because it's like, oh, wow, this is a great opportunity. But the problem then is that your meeting gets very disjointed because you have multiple agendas in the same room. Sorry. And it's very important if others are attending that you talk to them all informally in advance and make sure that you don't dilute the messaging. The composition of the delegation, the more formal, the less useful it gets. So try to keep it informal. Ultimately, high-level decision makers, whether they're politicians or senior civil servants, are human. They have, day-to-day challenges like everybody else. They may have been stuck in traffic on the way to work. They've had to do the school run, all the other things. The more informal you keep it, the less, conflictual the conversations seem to be. I almost start all my conversations with how are you doing, how the kids doing. So pre-meeting with colleagues or allies and agree on what to focus. This is very important. Don't air differences in public. Politicians are fantastic at divide and conquer. They really are. And because of the clipping services, they often know when their name has been mentioned. So if two people are in the room with two very differing views, the politician could very easily just mention their support for one of the views, which would then obviously lead to people airing their differences in public. And it's very important that there's always a solid front. Of course, dressing for the occasion, that's a bit of a no-brainer. Agreeing on who will lead, having a note taker. This is very important. The ultimate power lies in the person taking the minutes, what happened in the meeting or not. Of course, know your stuff, but also engage in genuine dialogue. And then, of course, debrief and follow up. Once you've done this, it then becomes easier for you to know your targets, what makes them tick. It's easier for you to give them credit when it's due. It's easier to research their potential arguments and have your counter arguments prepared. And also to use reasoned and evidence-based argument. It's also much easier then to ask questions, make suggestions, and build trust. And you can listen and respect your views even if you disagree. And this is quite important. It's not always possible, but if there is a way to get a win-win solution, then that's always the best position. And be assertive, not aggressive. I think sometimes when we work in this world, it's easy to feel outraged, to feel anger at the lack of progress and the real damage it does to people's life. But I think being assertive rather than being aggressive, tends to help a bit more. And I think the last point here for tips for you is if you're not going to get what you need, then you need to know when to retire and fight again another day. And one of the most famous retreats in history was the Chinese Communist Party on what was called the Long Walk. And it was actually a complete disaster if you were in the Chinese Communist Party at the time. But it was a retreat that went on for years. And through that retreat, they actually built the support they needed. So retreating is not always a bad thing. Sometimes retreating can actually be the time that you need to build what you do. So I've got like a few more slides. So just building the relationships. Don't forget to cultivate the officials who have influence. Remember that face-to-face and telephone contact beats everything else. And then, of course, share information. It's always valuable to share information. And lobbying is not a once-off event. It's a strategy. And I think this is part of the difficulty. People want to do a quick fire win. It is a strategy, and lobbying, some of the best campaigns take 8 to 9 years to win. Lobby relationships are for life. So who knows where your lobby target will end up. Sometimes you're working with a government official who eventually becomes a permanent secretary, maybe even a minister. And so it's very important that you build these relationships in a way that they can work for you in all the time. Also value all your contacts and keep them updated. If you're spending this much energy building these relationships, it's very important that you keep this with you. So this is pretty much the last one. I think it's just something to be said on negotiation. Negotiation is a very dirty word, right? When you're dealing with advocacy, we've got a cause, we've got righteousness, we've got to win. And again, are there win-wins? Are there clear bottom lines? Are there concessions? Are the conditions right to negotiate? And can you anticipate what people will say? It's important that you rehearse, document, develop answers to likely responses beforehand, but always close the meeting with a summary of your position, the next steps. And always remember, negotiate in good faith, seek common ground with shared interests, because the first impression can last a lifetime, right? So make sure that you negotiate in good faith, communicate what you want, and withdraw if things are not going well. Thank you so much. I hope that was quite a helpful practical guide, and I know Kenneth will be giving a much more exciting presentation now. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. It was a very interesting presentation. I think you gave like a lot of tips to how to reach out to the high official in the government or the leaders of a country. I just want to reiterate like the one line that you say, like young people are not represented in decision-making processes, and this needs to be changed. And just to point out that the global youth movement have been created like with this goal, like to join forces at global level, but also at national levels, for them to reach out and to be around the table with decision makers. So with the tips, I think it will a fantastic way forward, and that will give like more opportunities for young people to be part of decision-making processes and make their voices heard as well. So thank you so much. Now Kenneth will share a bit more about like the practical things that he has been doing with his organization at the regional level. Kenneth, it's up to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Manishka. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, or everybody that is with us here today. Let me just check my screen. You see my screen now, yeah? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much to Sanitation Life for All and to the Secretariat and the Global Youth Movement for this opportunity to share some of our experience. I would like to present myself. I'm an environmental engineer from Costa Rica, and right now I'm the regional coordinator of the Central America Youth for Water Network, or Red de Jóvenes por el Agua de Centroamérica. So today I will share some of the experience we have reached in the past few years, and how we have reached out to the authorities, and how we have make a new allies like Sanitation and Water for All in this waterway. Also, I would like to tell that our network has the main objective to promote the participation of young people in the water management in the water sector. Right now, we are a network joining 6 countries from Central America: Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. We have been working since 2016, and we have over 500 volunteers in the region, and we have been working mainly in 3 big areas: advocacy, capacity building for members, and also volunteering and environmental education in different activities that we engage. So I would like to do this presentation more like a storytelling of how we have been engaging in different activities and how we have approached to the authorities. In the case of Costa Rica, for example, we started by reaching out to authorities in the beginning of our network. We write emails to the ministries and we say, hey, we are our network and we want to engage with you. So for example, in the first picture, we invited the former ex-Ministry of Water, Fernando Mora, to one of our national encounters. So he was just there because also he was very young person. So that was like a very good point of entry to that. But also we believe that one thing that is very necessary to do is to be informed of what is happening in your country, like what activities are happening, who are the authorities, so you can reach out to them. And then, for example, in the picture we have with the ex-president of Costa Rica, Luis Guillermo Solis. We met him in a water dialogue that was organized by United Nations here in Costa Rica. So we just emailed the United Nations and said, we want to be in the meeting. We are a youth network, and yeah, we reached out to the president there. And also, other one good tip that we like to share is like always try to take some pictures to remember the moments, so them to remember you too, and the work you are trying to do with our network. Also, with the second former ex-water minister, Aide Rodriguez, We also had some in-person meeting, and also in the pandemia times, we have like virtual meetings with her. And that was very good because it allows them to know well what are the intentions and what are we doing. And so this allows them to invite us to different meetings. Or for example, last year here in Costa Rica, we celebrate like the 80 years since we have like a water legislation. So we got the invitation from the ministers to be part of that activity. So that shows that with the years, we have reached out to like position our name and the intentions of organization with the authorities. Also, another good story we have to tell is from 2019, when here in Costa Rica was held the 5th Latino Sun Conference. So in that moment, we send a letter to the authorities that was in charge of this activity, and we tell them, we know Latino Sun is coming and we want to be part of it. But we all not only want to be part of it, like to hear other people what have to say, because we want to have like a main activities in the conference. So we got the chance to ask them to give us a session. So that's the one in the picture. So it was this young water professionals from all over different countries of Latin America sharing their experiences working in the field. So that was very meaningful. And also we work with the authorities and the academia to promote that this Latino Sun Conference have a lot of young professionals, as you can see in the picture. So it was like very meaningful for us have the author has the chance to bring all our ideas and innovation to this conference that historically it was or used to be more just from the authorities of the governments. And also in the same moment, in the same week of this Latino Sun Conference, it was organized here in Costa Rica, the sector minister meeting of sanitation and water for all. So in that moment, we were not part of SWA as partners, but we send them an email also, and we say like, we are a youth network and we want to be part of your event here in our country. So we got all like the opportunity to be in the meeting. We met with Catarina de Albuquerque, the SWA CEO, and we were part of the civil society delegation. We was like really good to meet people from all over the world that were like doing, but as you can see in the picture, we were the only one youth network joining that event. So from that moment, we decided we wanted to keep working with SWA and to give our inputs and ideas to keep promoting the participation of youth. And that's how we can indirectly reach out to the authorities too. So in the next few months after this sector minister meeting, we got the chance to be in our regional meeting in Peru, giving our ideas, and also I got the chance to be in the Stockholm World Water Week. So SWA invited me to be part of a session they already have with authorities, and I got the chance to give a speech about the importance of youth people in the acceleration of the SDG 6. Also, in the following years, we keep working with them, and also we were very happy to hear that SWA was launching a new youth strategy that was, as you can see, that was released in 2021, and we gave some inputs to that. And also, something that I think is very important is like to always give your feedback to the organizations, so how they can improve the youth participation. So in the first picture, you can see that was in the first sector minister meeting here in Costa Rica, and the methodology of the sessions with the ministries, it was more like hearing them discussing in between the ministers. So I remember we got a feedback session with SWA and civil society, and we say we want to be in a more or horizontal way, or we want to be in a more participatory way when engaging the ministers, the authorities. And the good thing was that they hear us, and for the next SWA minister meeting in Indonesia, the methodology, it was very different because we all got the chance to be in the same table. As you can see in the picture, I was there with my colleague in the youth movements, Nikki Becker from Argentina, and we got the chance to ask the minister questions and to receive the immediate feedback from our ideas. So that was like very good stuff that was very game changing and allow us to be like much more in contact with them. Also, in this meeting last year, it was very special because we got the chance to make a declaration of youth, and I got the opportunity to directly give this declaration to the ministers of El Salvador, Nicaragua, Panama, and Guatemala. And that allows our networks to have like more open doors in each of the countries to reach out to them and to generate more concrete ideas of action. Also in that event, we had the chance also to speak with authorities from other sectors, but also we got the chance to speak with Henk Hovik, which is the special envoy of water from the government of the Netherlands, and working a lot with the incoming conference. And we share with him also a lot of our ideas of how we hope that this conference hopefully understands and incorporates the youth movement. And also, in this sector minister meeting, Nikki and I got the chance to release a speech at the end of the conference. So that was really, really meaningful for us because we got the chance to express ourselves with all the ideas we had, and comparing with the last meeting, as I mentioned before, I believe in 3 years, the meaningful way of the participation of the youth in these events improves a lot. And we got the chance to deliver this speech between more than 300 people gathering there. So that was a really good and high point in our advocacy way. Also, last year, we got the chance to participate in the other Latino Sun event that was held in Bolivia in October. My colleagues Hazel Sanchez and Rene Bonilla from Panama and Costa Rica, and they represent us thanks to the help of SWA. And also, as we got our past experience in the last Latino Sun, we reach out to the organizers of the event and we tell them we want to help you to shape youth events in the Latino Sun. So we got the chance to present our ideas and the work we've been doing there and inspire other youth organizations that were like more beginning in the way. And also another good tip is that it's good to be informed of what other authorities, not only the governments, has these important roles in the water sector. For example, the United Nations Special Reporter on the Human Right of Water and Sanitation, which right now is Mr. Pedro Arrojo from Spain. So we got a good chance to talk with Mr. Pedro and give our inputs to him. And that was a really good thing because he's a real ally also to the youth, and he has an important role. And sometimes what these human rights reporters do is not very well known from the youth. So it's another entry point to act on the human right to water and sanitation too. And for example, well, through the years we got the chance also to meet different the different reporters. First Catarina de Albuquerque, then Leo Heller too, and Mr. Pedro Arrojo, which is the current special reporter. And right now, for example, in the past World Water Forum in Senegal, we also got the chance to meet him and to arrange a quick meeting with him and the youth, presenting the youth booth in the event, which was really good because many people there don't even know who was him. So that's what I'm saying is very important to know all these figures so you can understand who you need to engage with. Right now it's interesting because we keep having like a very good relationship with Mr. Pedro. We even have his WhatsApp and he sent us the videos he do and we share with him the what we are doing, and I believe that's a really good point of entry on the human right to water. And also another strategy that we have been implementing is the intergenerational dialogues. For example, in Costa Rica, we got the chance to have a dialogue in the Congress of the country, also have a virtual dialogue during the pandemic times. And recently, we got an intergenerational dialogue in the National Encounter of Youth for Water that we organized as part of the Global Youth Movement events. And about these intergenerational dialogues, it's important to recommend you that always invite like the ministries of the highest authorities, but sometimes it happens that they are not like available to meet with youth, for example. So in our cases, we invite the ministries, but they send like representative from the ministry, but not the authority. But anyways, we keep go forward and have the dialogue with them. But hopefully, and I think that's one of the challenges we have, is that in the future, all the authorities understand better the importance to straight talk with the youth directly. So, but we keep pushing for that. And also, well, I wanna mention, as I mentioned before, we recently organized some youth meetings, youth encounters in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Ecuador as part of the Global Youth Movement in the way to the UN Water Conference. And all the events contemplate the intergenerational dialogue component. And also we understand that having the authorities or the representation of the institutions will depend a lot on the context of the country. Not in all the countries is easy to reach out to them, but I know we need to keep pushing for that. And for example, in Nicaragua and Ecuador, there were no authorities from government, but there were authorities from other sectors like academia and NGOs. So we believe that it is important to understand that we need to reach out to all these leaders in the sector, not only to the governments. And also, well, another example of our advocacy way is that we were recently part of the ECLAC Regional Water Dialogues in Chile. We got the chance not only to participate, but also to I got the chance to release a statement of one of the sessions, and I got the chance also to meet with Jose Manuel Salazar, which is the executive director of ECLAC, and we also share with Alicia Barcena, which is the executive director of the ECLAC, Henk Ovik, and the ambassador of the Netherlands. And also it was good to see that in these high-level events, we got the chance to have like a youth delegation from people from Mexico and Chile that were in in the meeting too. I believe this is like good points that shows that the participation of the youth are really increasing, and we are being taken serious as we should be. And we need to keep pushing for even better and more meaningful participation. But I believe the work we have been doing from Central America, South America, North America, and all over the world in the last few years has allowed us to make this happen. And that's what I think it's very important to keep working together. And I believe that the global youth movement has that big objective, and we think we are in a very good point to keep working together. So as some final challenges I would like to share with you today is that we need to achieve the formalization of youth spaces to increase our impact in the local, national, and international levels, because many times what's still happening is that we depend on the goodwill of the people organizing the event, for example, and also we depend on the role that organizations that the Secretariat for Water or Sanitation or Water for All has right now that are supporting the youth. But I believe the next step that we all together need to achieve is that these spaces of youth are like formalized, so it did not depend on the goodwill of the people in the moment, but the participation of youth will be ensured for the future. And that participation, as I mentioned before, need to be really meaningful, need to be in the decision-making process, need to have the opportunity to release a species, need to have the opportunity to follow up their actions we are proposing. We work a lot in giving our declaration and key messages, which is very important to do, but we need also the existence of a mechanism that allows to keep working on that, like have the track of what we are asking for to the governments and the authorities. And as I mentioned before, keep building bridges and alliances from the youth worldwide. Like, I believe we are in the best momentum to do that. And yeah, we need to keep working together to increase our impact in this way to achieve the SDG 6 and the water and sanitation for all. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I will be available if you have any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. So a couple of points that that we need to highlight from Kenneth's presentation is the fantastic work that the Latin American organizations, the youth in Latin America are doing. And I'm sure like a lot of young people who are present here today, you are also doing fantastic work in your region. But I want to encourage everyone, like Kenneth said, reach out to organization, reach out to institution whenever you know that they are going to host an event in your region or in your country. Reach out to them to share ideas how you can bring your voice to this platform. Like Kenneth said, when the Latino Sun was the organizing committee of the Latino Sun started like brainstorming about the event, the youth organization in Latin America reached out to them to have like a youth space there and different sessions just to talk about youth participation in the water, sanitation, and hygiene sector. The same thing happened like during the SWA sector ministers meeting. Our like Kenneth and Nikki, who were both our youth representative at this high-level event, reach out to us, even though they were invited and so on, and they would have been in the ministerial dialogue, but they wanted to have like a space officially in the agenda where we provided like the space in the closing ceremony. So please work together with institutions, work together with organizations. Don't hesitate to reach out to them with your concrete asks and solution. This is what I think institutions and organizations are asking for. if you reach out to them with very concrete asks and solutions as well. So thank you, Kenneth, for sharing like all this fantastic work that you are doing in the region. So now I will hand over to Elisa, who will present like the campaign that will be officially launched tomorrow. Elisa. Yeah, fantastic. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Manishka, and thank you, Kenneth and Kevin. I learned so much from both of your presentations. Kenneth, the work that you're doing is so very inspiring, and Kevin, I think from the one quote that I will remember definitely from your presentation is power with others is always the strongest form of power. And I think that's such I think that in just a few words, it encapsulates what the Global Youth Movement for Water is all about and why we decided to come together as a movement to ensure that our voices are heard and that we can hopefully influence bold political will and action at all levels by coming together. So just a little bit of background before I dive into the presentation of the campaign. So as most of you will probably know if you're connected here today, we at the 9th World Water Forum in Dakar in Senegal last year, so the Global Youth Movement for Water was launched to face a little bit this idea that in the water space there was more and more youth engagement and youth involvement, and there was more and more different organizations supporting youth or youth organizations, but there wasn't necessarily a mechanism in place, as we can see in, for example, in the climate space, in the biodiversity space, to really bring all of these youth voices together in a more coordinated manner. So that's when the International Secretariat for Water and partners decided to create the space to coordinate, to work together, and to elevate each other's voices, which has now been called the Global Youth Movement for Water. So in the lead up to the conference, so obviously I'm pretty sure we're all here aware of the important conference that's coming up in just a few days from now. It's going super fast. So we've come together to discuss how can we make sure that our voices are heard? How can we make sure that we're not just going there as 200, 300 young individuals, but that we're going there as a common movement with key demands that we could ensure that our voices are heard and that change is implemented. So I will just take a few seconds to start this presentation for you. I do apologize for those that were in the meeting yesterday. It is the same presentation, so you might have already seen this. But hopefully this will give you a little bit more insights into what this campaign is about, how you can join, and hopefully how this can be a tool to achieve all of the different elements related to advocacy and influence that Kevin and Kenneth presented a little bit earlier. So without further ado, the campaign is entitled Fill Up the Glass. Why this campaign? So as we mentioned, well, I think we're all pretty convinced here today that water is a global challenge, if not the biggest global challenge. So a few key figures, I won't go over them now, but I think the important part is here, what's in the middle here. That was already mentioned by both speakers before me, but that young people, despite being agents of change, we are rarely included in decision-making processes. And we need more. We need more action. We need more bold political will at all levels, from the local, regional to the global levels. So who is behind this campaign? Why this campaign? So to elevate the voice of young people around the world, create a movement the world can no longer ignore, influence bold political will and action from decision makers for a water secure world. So obviously the UN conference coming up again in just a few days, and this is a unique opportunity to get our voices heard, to use all of the lobbying tools and tricks presented by both Kevin and Kenneth. I think this is a unique opportunity that it's only, I think it was almost 46 years since the last one. So I think we need to really make sure that we make the most out of it. So who is behind this campaign? So the 370 youth-led organization and allies of the Global Youth Movement for Water. I think this is what makes it particularly strong. It's that, yes, there is so many youth-led organizations involved, but also allies that are willing to put youth as SWA, as ISW, to put youth as a priority in their own program, and to put all the resources necessary to allow youth to really implement change. Who is this targeting? So youth worldwide and allies that wish to contribute, act, and influence change. So we're trying to make our circle a little bit bigger. So the water space tends to be quite small, as we tend to speak to each other a lot, and we're trying to maybe together make this circle a little bit bigger, and go get other youth, other decision makers, other organizations that aren't necessarily aware about what is happening. So the campaign was catalyzed by the International Secretariat for Water, and with the financial partnership and support of the Swiss Development Cooperation Agency and the government of the Netherlands. So what are we asking for? What is our key message? So by coming together across generations, sectors, and continents, we can fill up the glass. So it's a very positive campaign to influence and concrete action. Small things add up, and every action counts. So what are our 5 key demands? So we have 1 key demand for each one of the key themes of the conference. So the first one, access to water and proper sanitation as a basic human right, especially for young women and girls. Second, dedicated funding for youth for community-based water solutions, promoting transparency and accountability. Adequate education and training for youth, especially young women, to acquire knowledge and skills to better tackle water and climate issues. Inclusion of youth in water-related mechanism, negotiations, and decisions. So this is in line with the 30-30-30 target, which you might be aware of. So this idea that we want to ask for at least 30% of representation of youth under the age of 30 by 2030 in all mechanisms related to water. With water as an instrument of peace and cooperation. And lastly, creation of an inclusive and permanent body within the UN to address water challenges, and nomination of a UN Youth Envoy on Water. So I think this relates nicely to what Kenneth was speaking about earlier. How can we create mechanisms, permanent mechanisms that will be in place in a structured way to ensure that the youth voices not only depend on the goodwill of the people that are there now, but that can ensure that the youth voices be included in a structured manner for years and years to come. So now the most important part, how can you join the campaign? So as Michelle said, the official launch will be tomorrow. So hopefully everyone will join us on social media for tomorrow, but as well in weeks and months to come to share the campaign. So there will be a video, so 3 videos actually, so 15, 30, and 90 seconds that you will be able to share. We're also inviting you to take a picture, such as this one, as my dear friend Danielle that took a picture with him with a water bottle here. He's written on the water bottle, fill up the glass. So you could take a picture of yourself with the glass either half full or half empty, depending of how you see the world and the water issues we're facing, how optimistic you may be or not, and then you can caption my glass is half full or half empty because, and I or we, as you wish, can fill up the glass. If you will be participating to the conference in New York, so you can showcase your support to the conference. And I think this is a nice way as well to show that the messages that you will be sharing during the conference is not only your messages of you as an individual, but it's much larger than that, that you're speaking on behalf of a movement of thousands of millions of young people around the world that don't necessarily all have that chance of joining in on the international UN conference, but that do want to get and need to get their voices heard. Second, so raise awareness on the most pressing water issues. So there's different material that we will be that you can use to raise awareness on these issues and with key figures. Third, share what you or your organization are doing to fill up the glass. So I'll put the link in the chat just after my presentation, but we're offering to create like a personalized visual for you if you want to put forward either what you're doing as an individual or your organization. And then share what needs to be done to fill up the glass. So a few advocacy tools. Hopefully Kevin will agree that these are maybe some good tools to get us started. So letter to decision makers. So we've put in the form of a letter the key messages, the key demands that I shared a little bit earlier that you can just download, add the logo of your organization, and adapt to make sure that the key challenges that you are facing in your community, in your region, in your country are well portrayed through this letter. Organize an event. So even if you won't be in New York, you can organize an event to mobilize your community for water, whether it be before or after the conference. So we've prepared a small guide for you to help you plan that. Share the key demands during your interventions at the UN conference, and create your own visual. If you want to, instead of showing what you are doing, if you want to share what you believe needs to be done, this is also possible. A short preview of the Trello that you will receive, so we'll be able to send that through to you, and you'll have all of the material here that you'll need. And finally, this is the URL of the landing page. If you go on it now, it's not quite ready, but fingers crossed it'll be ready for tomorrow or latest beginning of next week. And as my final message, together we can fill up the glass, and I truly believe that, and I hope that you will join us in making sure that everyone around the world is aware of this conference, aware of the issues, and aware of the fact that there is a global youth movement of millions of young change makers around the world that are rallying for change. So thank you so much, Minishka, and yeah, I'll stay around if ever there's any questions that I can help out.
Thank you, Elisa. I'm seeing the campaign only now. I missed the session yesterday, but it's fantastic. I'm loving the concrete arts with the campaign, the materials that were produced. So I really encourage everyone tomorrow join the campaign on social media. I think social media is a very, very strong tool for young people, and we can absolutely reach out to the people that we want to, because I think everyone is on social media nowadays. Also use the letter, reach out to your leaders in your country, organize the event. We have 3 weeks left before the UN 2023 conference, so we need to make a lot of noise and prioritize, share our message that we want water, sanitation, and hygiene to be prioritized worldwide. So thank you so much, Elisa. Thank you again, Kevin and Kenneth, for the overview and the insightful presentation and conversation. So thank you everyone for joining this session. And I hope to see some of you in New York, and the others, I hope you make a lot of noise on your communication channel. Thank you so much.